Fixed blades are the key. If you're gonna prepare to defend yourself and put something to work, this is the A+ answer. He was prepared. He went in armed. He's already thinking to himself, yes, do I want to mitigate this all together and just give them what they need and get them to get out? But when they come over the counter, now your life's at risk.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes. Our informational content cannot address all dangerous situations and cannot guarantee your survival or prevent injuries when the unexpected happens. The decision to carry a firearm, either for recreation or for personal defense, carries the risk and potential for injury and or death. Therefore, it is advised that you seek out and acquire proper training before using a firearm or any firearm-related product.
What are some self-defense techniques?
What would happen if there was a global internet outage?
What should I do if I hear shots ringing out?
Or what I should do if there's a major terrorist attack?
What should I have? What's the best?
What should I do?
What does that look like?
What would you recommend? Is there anything I could do?
All right, guys, welcome back to Dangerous Questions, an iRONCLAD original. The last episode, we talked about some pretty deep questions, and I always say, keep seeking the truth. That's part of asking these questions that we get into every episode. But the other part to that is taking action on these things. And one thing I want to point out, just as a mindset, as you guys are continuing to evolve, train, develop in your own journey with making yourself better at all these principles, is that sometimes it does take time. It takes patience. But what you can't do is do nothing. I think even as busy as our lives have become with all these different objectives and goals and duties that we have, especially as fathers and husbands, is really prioritizing the things that are important. So as you guys are watching these, as you guys are listening to these questions, I encourage you to think about that. What's most important to where you want to improve? And then start adding that either as a daily, weekly, or monthly discipline. Even if you can't go to the gym for 2 hours a day, every day, you got to do something. Don't do nothing. That's my point starting this as we listen to these new questions coming in of getting better and becoming more of an asset. Okay, first question. I am in my mid-40s and I feel like I've let my life slip through my fingers. I look at a guy like you who has accomplished a lot, and now that I'm out of my physical prime, I feel I've let myself, my family, and God down. What can I do to jumpstart my life? Man, humbling to even ask this, you know, and it's a reality I think everybody confronts at some point in their life. You know, we realize and look back that, dang it, I could have done it better. I did this, this, and this, and I should have done that. The truth is it's never too late to start. I do believe with all of my being that God's timing is perfect in everything. And sometimes the sacrifices that we've made or the things that we've screwed up help the people after us see things from a different lens. Think about the people that have mentored you, taught you, led you in every sense of your life. Who can you look back at and say, you know what, because of that person's life, I am now doing this? Somebody's going to have that from you, especially if you're a father. You can do things imperfectly, and those are going to be used for the greater good. Do we feel like in the moment, dang it, I let my kids down, I screwed this all up? That's okay to feel that way. Confront it and take accountability, which is what you're doing right now. But I hope that you hear this and you remember that it starts today. You can change what you've done, and you got to be radical about it. You got to be radical about that change, and you have to be intentional about that change. The physical aspect of things, you'd be surprised at how many guys in their mid-40s can get up and go, right? I'm in my early 40s, and I'm in my A game right now. I can still, if I wanted to, sharpen that sword to be an asset every single day. It's an opportunity. It's just whether we choose to prioritize it or not. Where are our priorities? Where do you put your priorities? And if this is something that means something to you and you're willing to take action and start on it, because ultimately, what can you do to jumpstart your life is really take my advice and take accountability and start today. But it has to be a radical change. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to do one small thing. I'm going to make one small tweak or change. If we've really gotten that far off the track, we need to put it in a high gear. You need to take it to another level. And you've got to find a way to dig deep enough to take all of that motivation and put it into what's going to change you today in a very radical, meaningful way. Okay, it's not too late. God's timing's perfect. It was permitted for you to go through that season. Now that you're out of that season, you've confronted this, even this being up on the screen, that means you need to take action. So it's a great question. We could all relate to this at some aspect in our life, and it really comes down to just saying, I'm going to change. I'm not going to be the guy anymore that lets life slip through my fingers. I'm not going to be the guy anymore. People are going to know me that even if I only have a year from now, I'm going to give everything I got. So when I die a year from now, they're like, man, he had a rough life, but he made a major change in this last 12 months. He was a totally different person. I don't know what happened to him. And they see that as an example that changes their life and the people that are going to come after you. Again, especially our children. Never forget, they are watching. So if you need any motivation to inspire you, think about everybody that's learning from your journey. They're going to see that you carry this weight with you. They're going to see that you walk with the regret of looking back at the things that you should have done better. And then what they're going to know is that my father took action in his life when things weren't going well for him and he felt like he let everybody down. He did something about it. So what are they going to learn? They're going to learn that inevitably, and they will, when they go through a rough patch in their life and they hit a speed bump and they go through a tough time, or they look back and regret, they'll remember your story to be able to take action and change their lives. Great question. Next question. What was the hardest lesson you had to learn over the course of your transition out of the SEAL teams? Man, so many things are flooding into my brain right now. But the one thing that I think still hits me to today, that things are built inside of you that you know for sure. And when I look around a bunch of men that are thinking and operating and living at a tier 1 level, one of the most painful things for me to confront during the transition, and even still to this day, was to be able to find people that are as driven. My buddy Brad Haynes, he works at the Table Group Consulting, gives me so much great advice for, business and even life in general. Healthy, hungry, and smart, right? We want people that are living with that. The hungry part, the hungry aspect, humble, hungry, and smart. Sorry, humble, hungry, and smart. I had to rethink about those 3 things. That's what we want out of people. Those are the 3 characteristics that we want when we want somebody on the team. We can find smart people, we can find people that are humble, and we can find people that are driven, but the combination of those 3, of being in the teams of guys that were so driven, even if they didn't know the answer, they would push you out of the way to find it. And man, do I miss that. Do I miss being around people that you don't have to say things twice to. You say something, why did you go left when you should have gone right? It's rare to find people these days that will beat themselves up so much you don't need to give them any punishment. That is hard to find. And it just came to me right away as like, that's probably the most difficult thing. So as a leader with people on my team and running a business and my family and everything else, the people I surround myself with, it's important to me to have people that are humble, hungry, and smart. And that hungry part is hard to find. It's hard to build it in somebody. My wife asked me a question the other day. She said, what motivated you? Who motivated you to become a SEAL? And it was an interesting question. And we were having a conversation about leadership. And I very quickly told her, I was like, nobody. Nobody told me, nobody motivated me, nobody pushed me to have that mindset. It was just something that clicked, and I knew for sure that it had to happen. And along the entire way, it was the voice in my head that was like, you got to keep going. Well, my mom did help. My mom had some conversations with me that I wouldn't ever give up because she helped create resilience inside of me. But it was the voice that I had in my heart that was like, you got to go, you got to give it everything. And there were supportive things along the way that for sure helped me that could have easily taken away. Like, oh, you'll never do it. Oh, you're not going to do it. My sister is like, it's not if and when. And my mom's like, you're not quitting until you're, you're dead. She's like, you're not going to quit at all. She's like, you're either going to die or make it. And my ankle was rolled, and she was like, your leg has to fall off for you to stop moving. And it was things like that that definitely helped. But ultimately, it was the will inside of yourself that is going to carry you through. All those people help. But I have a challenging time still to this day finding people that have that combination to a high degree. It's rare. It's to be appreciated and not taken for granted for sure. So if we have people on our team, family, friends, and they're humble, hungry, and smart, keep them around and keep leaning into that and keep growing together. There is so much to talk about here. That's the first thing that popped into my head, but for the sake of time, we're going to keep moving. Next question. I'm a firefighter, and I've been exposed to and witnessed many scenes that have weighed extremely heavy on me. Your past career has exposed you to death and loss. What are some tactics you have used to overcome the weight of the career? Something that I deal with every day. And it's been years having to transition, having to reflect, having to pray. First and foremost, I will tell you that my faith is at the center of everything that I'm going to say. It's been the core growth and really conversion and change that I've had in my heart and my mind, being able to reflect on why I've experienced what I've experienced. Why would I go through such things? Why did God expose me to this? And realistically, it's understanding God's calling for us that puts it in a really clear lens that allows us to see the trauma and allows us to see the really difficult adversity that we go through in a whole new way. And this is the thing that really came to light when I started to look at the strength in the widows and the children that I was seeing, all throughout my transition. And why I found such strength from them was because they were in it more than anybody else was in it, in the loss, in the pain, in the suffering. And I started to see there was purpose in the pain. There was purpose in the suffering. And as much as it still sucks, at every bit of it, I started to realize that there was something greater here that God was allowing through these losses. And I think it's when you confront that and when you truly realize that God had intention here. And because he cares for us, because he loves us, because he has mercy, we're exposed to different things that open up our mind and heart to other things that we can be doing differently. We live differently when we experience loss, do we not? When we lose somebody we love, it's crippling in a lot of ways, but it also changes everything about who we are. And we can also see some really bad things that occur, right? When we experience loss, we can see people that take a left turn for the worse, and it really affects them in a negative way. And we can see people that take it and use it in amazingly humble and profound ways. They really are a choice. And I know people on the left side of this problem that are really struggling would say that maybe there isn't a choice, but the truth is that there is, and that there's mercy and love and glory that can come from confronting these things and seeking what God is going to work through each one of these scenarios. So faith being the center. And then finding your purpose with this. Why did God expose me to this? It's a question I ask myself a lot. I've even found myself talking about this a lot lately about after the helo went down for Extortion 17, sitting in Arlington and having that vision like it was yesterday of 17 caskets lined up with all of the family members, wives and children. I stopped. I literally stopped walking as all the team guys came out of the bus as we were bending that corner. And I remember looking at my watch. It was a Raso, by the way. I remember looking at my watch, and as I came around the corner, because that was vivid, and that's why I said that. It was a vivid memory of me looking at the watch, seeing what time it was. I don't remember what time it was, but I looked at the field, and so there was a line that kind of guided you to where it was and the watch, and I looked, and I took 2 more steps, and I paused, because it was such a heavy weight in that moment that it was like ingrained on me forever. And I literally looked up and was like, what are you asking me to do here? What do you want me to do with the weight of this situation? And I think for anybody that's experienced loss, anybody that's been through pain, you have to be able to ask and confront that question of saying, what is God asking me to do? What is the action with my life that I'm called to take in this scenario? Because there is something. I know with all my heart that it's not nothing, and if there's anything that in my experience tells me, it's communicating this to you and anybody else listening, is to recognize that the pain and the suffering was purposeful and God's asking you to do something with it. The worst thing that we can do going through any of these things as a firefighter, as law enforcement, in the military, or anybody that's experienced any type of loss or trauma or adversity is do nothing with the scenarios that you've been given. Because in some way, they are gifts to either yourself or somebody else. And honestly, how dare we let that type of loss and trauma happen and not use it for the greater good? And I think that that's probably the biggest thing that I've not only come to know myself, but I've seen that play out too many times to not sit here and tell you with all my heart that it's the truth of us going through these things. It's permitted for a reason, it's purposeful, and you need to figure out what to do with it. And ultimately, it'll be a greater good, and you'll know you're doing the right thing when you're living out the greater good for the experience and the pain that you've been through. We could talk about that all day, couldn't we? Okay. Next question. I train every day, and I am genuinely passionate about defense and tactics. However, if it comes down to life and death, I don't know what it takes to take a life. How can I justify taking someone's life in a worst case scenario? Again, I'm Dom. You're listening to Dom. This is Dom's life and my experience culminating to what I've been through and where I'm at today. I think about this often. What's the time to pull the trigger? What is the right time to take a life? That is a very, very challenging thing to answer. And the single most important thing that I believe has given me confidence to be able to make that decision when the time comes is prayer. I don't know where you're at on your faith journey. I don't know where you're at in accordance to what you believe God is calling you to do. But ultimately, we need to know more about how God loves us and what our purpose is to love each other, because that gives us a very clear indicator on when to make that decision. I often talk about the scenario in my courses about if somebody came, kicked that door in, grabbed my daughter by the hair and drug her across the pavement, you're gonna spark something in me that is probably the most visceral thing that could possibly come out of me. And then I have to make a determination what to do here, right? And ultimately, I have to defend life at all costs, at every stage, no matter what. And if somebody's innocent and they don't deserve it, you're gonna get me to do everything that I can to put myself in between that scenario, right? So if the intensity is really high, right, and somebody goes to kill one of my family members with the action of they're pulling a hammer fist back or they're pulling out a blade or a gun's out already firing, I always say, I'm gonna love you until you give me a reason not to. That to me is like, it should be ingrained into our heart as somebody that takes tactics and defense seriously, because it allows us to really open our heart to do everything for somebody, even in the moment of violence, right? Because somebody could be really violent, but they don't deserve to get killed, right? That's something that we learn over time. But I know for sure that if I see something evil present itself and now it's affecting innocent lives, that intensity is going to be matched with my intensity. And my intensity needs to even go above and beyond them to mitigate the threat at all. This is where knowing tactics and defense is important so you can apply the correct level of force to the scenario that's given. That to me is the best thing that you can do. Pray and ask God for the wisdom and the prudence to make the decision when it comes, right? That to me arms you better than anything that you're ever going to be able to do. Second is exposing yourself to these environments in training, scenario training. You're going to see some good coach, or even if I was watching a scenario, right? And scenario happens all the time. I put people through a couple of different hard scenarios. People are extremely violent all over the place. And then the next scenario, I have somebody come in and bumps into you and asks you for the time. And when they bump into you because your adrenaline's pumping and you're on high alert, you pull out your blade and stab them. I'm like, whoa, that guy didn't deserve to get stabbed. He was just asking you for the time. He just accidentally bumped into you. So you have to know where that threshold is, and you do it through repetition. You know, that's why we're so good at, like, do I pull the trigger on this guy or do I not pull the trigger? You know, is that a hostage? Is that an unknown, or is that a threat? You know, I need to discern that in a split second, and I need to be able to understand the why and purpose of what they're doing. That comes through repetition. Again, pray, ask God for the wisdom, love people unconditionally until they give you a reason not to, and then match the level of intensity or go above and beyond if needed, if innocent lives are at risk of being taken. That should give you at least a clear starting point to start going into, like, well, who are you? How well are you trained? You know, faith has given me a lot of confidence to know that I'm going to make that decision in the right time and place. You know, I look back at my career and all those decisions that I've had to make, and ultimately I'm left with, I wouldn't change anything that I did, but I certainly think that I would make decisions differently today if I had to. Maybe I would give somebody a microsecond. Maybe I'd give somebody a second to see, like, okay, they're walking towards the gun. They're clearly bad guys. You know, do I want to let them pick that thing up and see if he's going to do it? You know, it's just, I'm just saying it allows you a little bit more wisdom and prudence in scenarios where if somebody doesn't deserve to get killed, we should be doing everything we can not to, right? And allow them another opportunity to repent and go to Jesus. All right, guys, that wraps up the questions. We are going to go into the scenario breakdown. Let's see what it is. All right, so pause real quick. So just so you guys that are viewing or listening, you guys can understand, this is kind of a kiosk. You know, it's a store. It's got stuff on the shelves. There's glass counters, which this guy, the teller, is behind. He's walking to the cash register now. These guys are already masked up. These guys already have masks on. They clearly came in there. There's an expectation now, right? Before even going into this video, just so you guys are listening, there's an expectation that they want something. Okay, well, the teller, the cashier, he's walking to the cash register. So there's clearly going to be an interaction that happens here. And what is going to happen and how it unfolds, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that the scenario's tense. They want something, and we've got to figure out what he's going to do to be able to work through this scenario. Okay, let it play. All right, so he walks over to the cash register. I see him picking something up on his right hand already. These guys are clearly communicating. I don't have the audio, but he's manipulating something in his hand. I'm having a hard time seeing exactly what that is. Maybe it looks like a blade. Okay, he just grabbed something off the counter. There's a back and forth, there's a dialogue. Okay, now it just escalated. That guy just came over the counter. Okay, so he's got a blade in his hand. Man, he's getting some good reverse grip shots in. Okay, so he's got this guy in almost a rear naked with one arm and the blade and reverse grip in the other. I mean, those are good reverse grip shots. Okay, I think totally justifiable. You know, he just is defending himself, his store, his goods, he's being attacked. They're coming over the counter. His buddy totally takes off. It's a shame the guy's got a cross on his neck, right? I noticed that right away. He took what he needed. Okay, they're both coming back in, and now he grabs something else. The other guy comes over the counter, and the blade goes to work. Okay, he's going high-low with the blade, too. That shot right there. Oh, man, pause for a second. All right, that clavicle, that behind-the-neck shot that he just took, there's an extreme amount, or there's a large bundle in there of nerves, and it's painful just to push here. So if you're at home or you're driving in the car, go ahead and push on your clavicle and just push down in your neck. There's a deep bundle of nerves there. So when you get hit there, what just happened, and he reverse grip, stabbed him right in the neck there, there's an extreme amount of pain that's going to come along with that, right in the back. So this guy knows, like, he's getting hit up, and you can tell him he's almost starting to submit there at one point. Pause again. I think the other thing that's really important to note here is that neither one of these threats had anything in their hand, at least that I didn't see. So he's assessing this. He's like, okay, nothing's in their hand. Now they're getting aggressive. They're coming over the counter. He clearly had this blade staged and thought about this because he visualized it and did it. He opened up the blade and went to work. It was a folder. That's what I'm realizing, that he was manipulating a folder and then started to reverse grip, hit these guys. So what am I breaking down out of this? First of all, is just to tell you what's going on. But ultimately, this guy was somewhat prepared. You know, what I will say is that I'm not sure where this is, but that's why I carry a fixed blade. We've done scenarios and training all over the world, all over the country, and folders will break down in those moments where you need it the most and you're hitting and you're getting dynamic and then the folder closes on you, which is why I always say fixed blades are the key. If you're gonna prepare to defend yourself and put something to work, this is the A+ answer. Of course, legality-wise and everything else that we have to deal with is something to keep in mind. You know, can you legally carry a fixed blade? A+ answer, I don't know. You guys have to make that decision depending on where you are. He was prepared. He went in armed. He's already thinking to himself, yes, do I want to mitigate this altogether and just give them what they need and get them to get out? But when they come over the counter, now your life's at risk. So I think that him being prepared, going in with the mindset of being armed and already having somewhat of a plan and being willing to fight worked to his advantage here. I mean, that guy got hit pretty good. Side of the ribs, lung, leg, back of the neck. I mean, he put that blade to work really well, not knowing how much he was trained or not. You know, if he's got to pull a folder out from the side of the table here and open it up while he's doing this, my guess is probably doesn't have that much training, but he at least thought about this enough to where he utilized it well. I'd love to talk to that guy. Can we get that guy on a podcast so we can just, you know, rep it out and see what his feedback there is? But ultimately for this scenario, he took action, he went in armed, he probably had a base level plan, and I think he mitigated at least risk to himself and was able to get these guys out of the store. I don't know the pre and I don't know the post, but that's at least the end for this scenario. All right, this is Dangerous Questions, an iRONCLAD original. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for those awesome questions, and God bless you guys. See you on the next one. Peace.